Declaring the winner of a trade when it happens is often a slippery slope, as it usually takes years to understand who truly won a trade, especially if that trade involves draft picks and or prospects. But with that said, some trades are made with a purpose. Dumping veteran cap space to be able to sign a young star, acquiring veterans for a playoff push, or even exchanging star players in order to shake up the current dynamic of a team. And with the complexity of these strategic trades, some of these trades have backfired horribly. In today's video, we're going to go over trades that backfired horribly. So has your team ever made a trade, a more strategic trade that ended up just completely backfiring? Comment down below, I'd love to know. And press subscribe for some more awesome content. Let's get straight into this video. The date is June 21st, 2017. The Florida Panthers had just finished off a disappointing season, but with players like Barkov, Jonathan Huberdeau having big breakout seasons, and a young budding blue line, the Panthers still had a bright future. And you know what the old saying is? Defense wins championships. Well, I think Dale Talon took this saying a bit too literally, because instead of going for the regular expansion rules, Talon decided to opt for option B, where he protect 4 defensemen and 4 players instead of doing 7 and 3, so that he could protect an extra defenseman in Alex Petrovic. And he'd do this over Jonathan Marchessault, and on the same day, he traded Riley Smith for a 4th round pick. And so to sum it up, Talon would trade away 2 of their top scorers to protect Alex Petrovic, who today is an AHL defenseman playing for the Providence Bruins. And Riley Smith, who they traded for a 4th round pick, would go on to put up 60 points in 67 games. And as for Jonathan Marchessault, who they leave exposed over Petrovic, would go on to put up an astounding 75 points. And Dale Talon decided to lose these players in the expansion process in order to protect Alex freaking Petrovic, who'd go on to play 2 very disappointing seasons in Florida, get shipped off to Edmonton, and today, again, he is an average AHL defender. And it's going to be very interesting to see how teams go about the Seattle expansion draft, because we saw numerous blunders just like this one for Vegas. Next, with the Chicago Blackhawks. And the year is 2016. The Chicago Blackhawks were 3 years removed from their last Stanley Cup, and they were in need for some gritty but offensively capable players to fill out the bottom 6, as they were trying to go for another deep playoff push. And so, the Blackhawks would take a massive risk by trading away former first overall pick and top prospect Philip Deneau, who actually wasn't very impressive in Chicago, but he was buried on the 4th and 3rd line with no special teams time. And a 2018 second round pick for 2 bottom 6 players, and Dale Weise, who was that sandpaper player who could score goals, and Thomas Fleischmann, who was that bottom 6 veteran presence. And well, unfortunately Chicago would be eliminated in the first round, and both Fleischmann and Weise would have next to no impact in the series. And afterwards, Fleischmann would retire the next year, and Dale Weise would leave in free agency. And as for Montreal, Philip Deneau would become one of the biggest Selke dark horses in the entire NHL, because analytically, he is one of the best two-way forwards in the league. And as for the 2018 second round pick, well, to add some more salt to the wounds, it would turn into Alexander Romanov, who's arguably the best defensive prospect in the entire NHL and projects to be a potential top-pairing defender. And this trade is just the epitome of the risk that happens when you acquire veteran pieces for a playoff push. Next, we have the Matt Duchene disaster. And after being involved in trade rumors for what seems like years, finally, after Avalanche came off one of their worst seasons in franchise history, Matt Duchene would be acquired by the Ottawa Senators. And this trade was very unique, as it was a 3-way trade that sent Matt Duchene to the Senators, Kyle Turris to the Predators, and a first round pick and a plethora of assets including high-end prospects to Colorado, who from the beginning were clearly the winners. As Matt Duchene was acquired by Ottawa as they wanted to be a legitimate cup contender, and they felt that Matt Duchene was the missing piece. Because in 2017 they got so close as they were defeated in double overtime of Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals. And so Melnyk, alongside of the Senators management, were very confident in their team they assembled. Except, well, this is where we'd see one of the biggest tire fires of the last 2 decades, as the Ottawa Senators would basically implode from the inside, as they went from a cup contending team to being videotaped in an Uber, wife drama, harassment, to finishing second last in the entire NHL. Which would ultimately cause more inner turmoil that would handcuff the Senators into trading away Erik Karlsson, Mike Hoffman, Mark Stone, Ryan Dzingel, and well, even Matt Duchene, who they had only acquired over a year prior. And as for the first round pick that was traded to Colorado, that was expected to be a late first round pick, well, luckily for the Senators, they lost the lottery. But Colorado would get the 4th overall pick in the 2019 NHL draft, which they'd use to draft Bowen Byram, who looks like a potential top 2 pairing defender, who looks like the perfect match for Cale Makar. And so the Ottawa Senators would go from a legitimate contender from the Duchene trade to imploding and entering a complete rebuild. Now, if you're a Senators fan, on the plus side, you guys have 2 out of the top 5 picks in the 2020 draft, which may single-handedly set up your entire future, but it is crazy to look at the turn of events that transpired after the Matt Duchene acquisition. Next, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets, who may have just loved Jeff Carter a bit too much. Because after about 9 years of disappointing seasons, Columbus had their eye on acquiring a franchise centerman. Because historically, it was the missing piece that was routinely keeping Columbus a step short of being that consistent playoff team. And so, when Jeff Carter became available on the trade market, the Blue Jackets jumped on the possibility. And their infatuation of wanting that first-line center came with a massive price tag, as they gave up on a 21-year-old Jacob Voracek who showed all signs of being a first-line winger, and a first and third round pick that were expected to be late picks. But considering they were expected to be a playoff contender with the acquisition of a franchise centerman in Carter, well, it was totally worth it. However, after only 39 games in a Blue Jackets uniform, Carter would demand a trade. As Mike Richards even said on the Spit and Chicklets podcast that he saw how much fun he was having in LA and he didn't want to commit to Columbus. And so after only half a season with their prized possession, Carter would be traded to LA, where he would not only flourish, but he would score the game-winning goal to win the Stanley Cup. And so in return, Columbus would receive Jack Johnson, who would serve as a serviceable top 4 defenseman. But to add a lot of salt to the wounds, remember that first round pick that they traded to Philly? Well, because they traded away their number 1 center, they were basically doomed at being a playoff team this season. And so they finished at the bottom of the league, and that first round pick turned into Sean Couturier, who was one of the best two-way centers in the entire NHL. On top of Jacob Voracek having a tremendous career with the Flyers. But don't worry, if you are a Blue Jackets fan, with Dubois, Werenski, and Jones, you guys do have an awesome future, and so far this playoff round, you guys have been improving so much, and it's awesome to see. And we'll end with Thomas Tatar, who the Vegas Golden Knights would spend an arm and a leg on to add depth for a playoff push. Because Vegas, heading into the 2018 NHL playoffs, would trade a first, second, and third round pick for Thomas Tatar, who was coming off a career low season, but of course he was on the Detroit Red Wings, and he could be that massive depth scoring piece needed for the playoffs. However, Tatar would not mesh well, as he struggled to find chemistry in the regular season, as he'd only put up 6 points in 20 games, and Tatar would have a very dismal playoff performance, as he'd actually be scratched several times and he'd only put up 2 points. On top of this, he'd also be playing the worst defensive game in his entire career. And this result in the fact that Tatar was basically a depreciating asset would cause Vegas to quickly ship him off to Montreal, alongside a blue chip prospect Nick Suzuki for Max Pacioretty. Now, luckily, they were able to recuperate their assets, but Tatar in Montreal has been a legitimate star, and arguably just as important as a piece, the Max Pacioretty. So on top of Vegas having to give up Nick Suzuki, who is an extremely bright young star, this one really blew up in their face, as Vegas basically ended up paying Tatar, who's been nearly a point per game scored this year, Nick Suzuki, who projects and is showing all the upside of a first-line center, a first-round pick that turned into Joe Veleno, 2 second-round picks, and a third-round pick for Max Pacioretty. Pretty crazy. Now again, max Pacioretty has been a great benefit for the Vegas Golden Knights, and I don't think Tatar would have rebounded, but this asset management and just the risk of them trading away so many assets for a depth scorer backfired horribly. But anyways guys, has your team ever made a trade that backfired horribly? Comment down below, I'd love to know. And before I end off this video, I do have a question for you guys, which is on the topic of live streaming, which has obviously become more prevalent in the hockey community recently, at least, I guess with all these games and the draft lottery. So it makes sense. I've been seeing some, comments from you guys though, asking for me to start live streaming, and I'm just curious on what you guys feel about that. How you guys feel about that? Do you guys want me to live stream? Let me know down below. I've been debating it. I've been humming and hawing on it. I used to do it, back in the day. I kind of stopped doing it, but I missed the live interaction with you guys. So comment down below. Let me know what your opinion is on that. Press subscribe for some more awesome content. See you guys later.